If there's one thing that Hazbin Hotel's fans and haters both get wrong about the show, it's what Vivzie is going for with heaven and the angels, in terms of what they represent to its narrative, but also its broader meaning. Many assume that this show is an explicit criticism of Christianity, leading to a lot of confusion about plot points that contradict that notion. Why is Adam allowed in heaven if he's just as bad as the sinners? Why is Charlie teaching the sinners to adhere to a corrupt system? Once you realize the show isn't necessarily about Christianity, or even religion as a whole for that matter, I think the answers become apparent.
Boy, everyone is stupid except me.
First, let's ask ourselves this. What exactly is the common link between the angels? Adam is allowed to be one, so clearly being virtuous and sin-free doesn't mean shit. But that isn't really backed up by the show's prologue at all. What's more likely, in my eyes at least, is that there's another factor the denizens of heaven share, and I'm starting to think that that factor is obedience. The one thing we know for sure will have you wind up in hell is disobeying heaven. I mean, obviously right, but hear me out. Of course we know Lucifer and Lilith were banished due to sharing the gift of free will with the humans, but to me, the most damning thing about the affair is heaven blaming it for unleashing evil. Sure, it may grant humans the choice to do harm, but there is absolutely nothing inherently evil about being able to make your own choices. In fact, their definition of the word evil must be pretty warped, seeing as they can justify mass genocide. I don't think it's a reach to imagine the real grievance heaven had was giving humans the power to defy their commands. So here's why I think Adam might actually deserve to be an angel. You know, in the eyes of Hazbin's god figure anyway. While this man may not be holy in the traditional sense, he's sure as hell loyal to heaven. Even his misogyny doesn't stop him from respecting Sera's authority, regardless of his ego sometimes getting the better of him. If obedience truly were what nets you a ticket to heaven, he'd have no real reason to be on the big man upstairs' shit list. Side note, this theory could absolutely account for why Serpentius was able to get into heaven. Why, you ask? Because he's the most subservient character in the show. Bro was taking orders since day one. But hey, what do I know, right? So anyway, back on topic. We've established that getting into heaven might be more about obedience than an arbitrary set of rules to abide by, right? This is probably why even the angels aren't aware of any concrete ideas.
Got me here, didn't it? Right, Sera?
He was the first human soul in heaven.
In fact, there's nothing to suggest Christian values and beliefs have anything to do with getting into heaven at all in this universe. Though I know some of you might be thinking that a certain scene counteracts that statement. It's been speculated that Luke calls Charlie and Vivzie's relationship blasphemous because being gay must be a sin. And I'll argue back because I get annoyed by this talking point. No, Luke finding it disgusting doesn't necessarily mean being gay is frowned upon in heaven. I believe a far more logical assessment would be that she takes issue with the relationship due to the fact it's between a fallen angel and the literal princess of hell. Just a hunch. So if Christianity perhaps isn't what's being unpacked here, then what exactly is? Well, in my opinion, heaven is much more likely a criticism of government systems being headed by the privileged elite. And here's why. When you think about it, the extermination plot is essentially about how the fate of a people gets to be decided by a fascistic regime, one that doesn't understand their hardships and even actively demonizes them. Adam and Peter are literal caricatures of privileged white men. The former is a misogynistic prick who believes the lives of people he considers below him are worthless, and while the latter may not be as overt of a douchebag, he enjoys and flaunts his good fortune without sparing a single thought for the suffering sinners, even actively getting annoyed when he's reminded of their existence.
Please keep your brimstone off the floor.
It's Sera, however, who actually may be the angel most complicit in her privilege. She pretends to be righteous and just, but she doesn't heed the morals she's purveying, and that's what the fuck Charlie has been saying. She may not be directly responsible for the exorcism, but she's enabling it, and chooses to be willfully ignorant as long as heaven's fine. She even paints herself as a martyr for merely carrying the burden of the knowledge. Meanwhile, Emily represents those with privileged blindness. This is a phenomenon where someone has lived such a pampered, sheltered life that they're completely ignorant of the plights of those worse off. While a person with privileged blindness may not have any malicious intent, they can't use their power to oppose the system, and that's why Sera has facilitated an environment where Emily doesn't know what's going on. And you know what? The angels representing the wealthy would make perfect sense, as the sinner's issues reflect those of the real-life working class virtually one-to-one. What causes sinners like Angel Dust and Husk to sin in the first first place, finding themselves in unfortunate circumstances due to being slaves to their vices, right? Well, drug dependency and gambling disproportionately affect the working class and have a far greater impact on their quality of life than the upper class. The angels don't suffer the same hardships as the sinners. They don't struggle to survive.
Cause here we got no worries, got no burglaries, no strife. It's the perfect afterlife.
Up in the ivory tower, they have no idea why they feel the need to do what they do, so it's easy for them to be like, oh, that couldn't possibly be me. But that's just a lie they tell themselves, so that they don't have to think about the inherent injustice of the justice system. But that begs the question then, doesn't heaven being corrupt make Charlie trying to get the sinners there not such a great idea, or even render the redemption plot redundant? No, actually, far from it, and there's a few reasons for this. Let's circle back to the narrative for a moment. First, why does Charlie even have her sights set on heaven? It's an inherently nicer place than hell, it's well maintained, no turf wars nor exorcism. Perhaps more importantly though, the sinners genuinely need rehabilitation. There's this misconception that Charlie is civilizing them, which is just a terribly uncharitable take. They engage in self-destructive behaviors, and in many cases, even harm others. Regardless of whether the end goal is really worth it, helping them overcome these vices is only a positive thing. Ultimately though, getting into heaven was always first and foremost a catalyst and service of motivating the characters. In a meta sense, it didn't need to make sense. It just needed to do its job well, which it undeniably has. The real kicker is that whether it does make sense or not hasn't actually mattered in the grand scheme of things since the court case in episode 6, because it's then that it went from a story about sinners attempting to be accepted into heaven's fascistic regime to a story about rebelling against it. Now, I don't think Charlie's gonna stop trying to get them into heaven anytime soon, as long as she sees it as giving them better lives. Not to mention, it still serves as these characters' core motivation at this point. Heaven can't really be the endgame until a hostile takeover of the government happens, but inevitably it will. That's why the finale has them fighting exorcists instead of making friends with them. Truthfully though, I'm starting to suspect Charlie might eventually realize she can't look there for answers, and that a better life for the people in hell means simply inhabifying hell. Thanks so much for watching, please subscribe for more, and feel free to check the description for my Discord.